back to my YouTube channel. Again, I have with me Lincoln Majogo, or legal practitioner. Thank you so much for the love, the likes, the comments, the subscribing, and I remind you to hit the subscribing button just below, just above the comment section. Yeah, so today we'll be discussing on mainly the law of lease. How are you, Lincoln?
I'm okay. You can call me Advocate if you want.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Hi, Advocate. How are you?
Advocate is alright. How are you?
I'm well.
Good to have you back.
Good to have you back again, and good. Thank you so much for the support.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so we're gonna talk of the law of lease, and I think mainly we can start by discussing the duties between the two parties, the leaser and the leasee. Yeah, I don't know if you can guide us and
Thank you for that, Soda. And it's a very important issue because when you look at the housing crisis that you have in Zimbabwe, so many people are coming from either rural places to urban places. They want accommodation.
Yeah.
And so the agreement that then regulates that arrangement is a lease agreement. So for easy reference, I'm just going to make reference to the lessor as the landlord and the lessee as the tenant. Yes, for ease of understanding, just to make sure that everyone understands what you're talking about. So that agreement is very important because it then prescribes rights and obligations of both parties to that agreement to ensure that there is no violation of your rights as a tenant when you're staying there, and there is no violation of the rights of the landlord when you as the tenant are also staying there. Okay. So we'll start with the duties of the tenant because you are the one who actually wants the property.
All right.
Okay. So that being said, you've entered into your agreement and you have agreed to pay maybe a rental fee of $80 per month. Mm-hmm. So your first duty is to pay your rent on time. Okay. So if we agree that on the 25th of March of every month, you are paying your rentals. That means on the 25th, as the landlord, I'm expecting money from you in the form of rent. Okay. So that becomes your first obligation or duty. Okay. The second duty is to preserve the property within the state that you found it in. All right. So you come to my property as landlord, you have an obligation to maintain those premises. That means cutting the grass, just making sure that the property looks presentable, is in good condition. Mm-hmm. Yes. And you also have an obligation to ensure that not only in terms of maintenance, in terms of physical maintenance, mm-hmm. but also in terms of who comes into the property. So you may invite friends if you want, fair and fine, but you must know that any misconduct that occurs or that is caused by any of your friends is liability upon you. So if your friends come over for a party and one of the friends scratches the wall, you are the one who becomes liable. Yeah. And so you have to understand those duties to ensure that at any given point in time, you are not liable. Mm-hmm. So those are the general duties of the tenant. Okay. Now we'll discuss about the duties of the landlord. Yes. Mm-hmm. Indeed, the landlord has an obligation to respect the tenant. So the landlord can't say, because it's my property, he can just get into your room, barge in anytime. No, he has to give you notice. If he intends to come to the property, if he wants to inspect, he has to give you notice. 2, once you have paid your money, mm-hmm. he is obliged to give you vacant possession. Okay. So once your agreement has been concluded, you have paid your money, the landlord then subsumes that obligation to give you the house. Okay. So the landlord can say, but no. Once the agreement has been concluded, he has an obligation to give you vacant possession of the house, of the property. Okay. And other obligations, these are general obligations, mm-hmm. like how we relate as persons. These are not things that necessarily need to be included in the contract. Okay. These are implied that once an agreement of this nature occurs, the landlord is supposed to behave reasonably towards the tenant. The tenant is also supposed to reciprocate. And so it's a mutual obligation between these parties. So generally, those are the duties that we have between a tenant and a landlord.
Okay. No, that's interesting. As you can hear, you can't let the landlord just barge into the property. I mean, even if they own the property, it doesn't mean that they have a right to walk in anytime. Thank you for that, Lincoln. Thank you for that, advocate.
You are welcome.
Yeah. So we move on to the payment terms. This thing that you call rent. In Zimbabwe, we have a multi-currency system, and we need to be cautious when entering into a contract of lease on what exactly is going to be included in the terms of payment. How best do you guide us on that one?
Precisely, thank you. That's a very pertinent issue because, like you correctly say, we have a multi-currency system in Zimbabwe. We have the US dollar, we have the Zimbabwean dollar, which some people call the RTGS dollar, and within the RTGS dollar, we have the swipe, which is a certain value that EcoCash doesn't have. And so it's very important that you specify how this rent is going to be paid. If you say $90, that's vague because it can be Zimbabwean dollars, it can be United States dollars. So you have to specify that this is 90 United States dollars being paid in cash. So when you have specified like that, if a person then says, I'm giving you Zimbabwean dollars, you would then go back to that provision and say, but no, we agreed to 90 United States dollars in cash. And so it's very important that people specify that provision because the legal tender in Zimbabwe is, is the Zimbabwean dollar. So someone can decide and say, fair and fine, we agreed to $90, but in terms of the law, I have a right to pay you in Zimbabwean dollars at the prevailing interbank rate. So to prevent those circumstances from happening, you have to have a clear provision that says, if it's Zimbabwean dollars that you want, it's 90 Zimbabwean dollars payable as cash, or payable through a bank transfer, or payable through EcoCash, or payable through any other forms that you may agree. But those have to be clearly set out in the contract, fail of which you have these ambiguities and conflicts, as well as taking each other to court.
Yeah, I've had instances whereby someone say, no, I can just give you at the bank rate, and it wasn't expressly written out in the contract, so it would be difficult to justify one. But I don't know if you can assist as well. There's a point whereby our real estate market changes, right, in terms of the value of certain properties. In terms of now rental adjustments, how best do you advise the landlords can go about it? Because sometimes they can just wake up and say, rentia pamari, rentia pamari. So it's difficult for our tenants at the end of the day. They need to protect themselves against those kind of situations.
Very, very difficult, Zoda, and quite a pertinent issue because now it's become more harder because there's a recent decision by the High Court which removes those protections that you're referring to on commercial tenants. So we have residential tenants, those who are staying because they want a place to live, and commercial tenants, those who are renting because they have a business which they are operating within those premises. And there is a decision of the High Court which was passed a few weeks ago, in terms of which the protections which were formally given to what we call statutory tenants has been taken away. What that means in simpler terms is if your contract expires, if your lease expires, you immediately must leave. Now, before that judgment, the law provided for that if your contract expired and you continued to perform your obligations, which is to pay rent and to perform every other obligations, you became a statutory tenant, which means that you were protected under the law. But under the new act, under the new regime, the decision of the High Court means that you no longer have that protection if you're a commercial tenant. That means once your contract expires, you have to leave. But secondly, touching on your issue of rental increases, one of the main provisions of the act or the regulations which were reviewed, which were repealed, was that it provided for a certain adjustment within the confines of the law. So adjustments could not go above a certain maximum or a certain ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
So the Ministry of Justice would always say, well, the maximum is this and that and that, so you can't adjust above that.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of this new judgment, that protection has now been taken away, which means that landlords can now increase rentals without even needing to go to the rent board.
Wow.
And this, for avoidance of doubt and for emphasis, relates to commercial tenants, which means that residential tenants are still protected, but for commercial tenants, the landlord now has the powers to increase rentals without consulting you, without going to the rent board. And we are yet to see how the courts are going to interpret that provision, because we still have common law which says those adjustments have to be reasonable.
Okay.
But what is reasonable in the eyes of the law? Well, we don't know, because it's subjective. You may say an increase from $100 to $200 is reasonable. To another person that's unreasonable. So we are yet to see how the courts are going to interpret reasonability. But as of now, the landlords now have powers to increase without seeking your consent and without going through the rent board.
Okay. There you had it for yourself. As you can hear, it's now different. Just after your contract expires, you won't be a statutory tenant if you are a commercial tenant. So you need to be wise on how you take up these contracts. You need to be wise on how you relate to the landlord. So thank you guys for watching. Thank you, Lincoln, for joining us once again. Advocate Lincoln for joining us once again.
Yes.
We see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you, Zoe.